I knew my career was over the moment Michael Brooks walked into that conference room without making eye contact. That fresh-faced Stanford MBA, 29 years old and daddy's golden boy, sat across from me like I was a line item on a budget spreadsheet that needed cutting. The name's Tom Caldwell, by the way, 57 years old, and I'd just spent the last 32 years at Cybercore Defense Systems building the encryption architecture that kept our military communications secure. Michael smelled like expensive cologne and desperation. His father, Bill Garrison, had been breathing down his neck for months about proving himself worthy of the VP Operations title. Every board meeting ended with Bill questioning whether his son had what it took. Michael's response was always the same: cut costs, optimize workflows, embrace digital transformation. His first words weren't about my 3 decades of service or the $180 million Pentagon contracts I'd secured. Instead, he opened with, "Let's discuss operational optimization, Tom. I'd spent 32 years writing code that protected classified communications. I'd missed Sarah's graduation because our Pentagon server crashed during a critical defense test. And now this kid who'd never written a single line of code was optimizing me out of existence." He flipped open my personnel file. "Look, Tom, you've contributed solid work over the years, but you've been here since 1992. We need people who are agile, adaptable to our digital transformation initiatives." Digital transformation. Michael had been pushing this agenda for 8 months, ever since his father reluctantly made him VP of Operations. Every team meeting became corporate speak: synergy, disruption, pivoting to new paradigms. Meanwhile, our actual work got buried under PowerPoint presentations. "We're moving toward a more streamlined workforce," Michael continued. "Younger talent, fresh perspectives, people who understand that legacy systems need to evolve or become obsolete." Legacy systems. That's what he called my encryption protocols, the same protocols that had passed every Pentagon security audit for 15 years, the same code that protected Special Forces communications. Behind his confident facade, I could see the fear. Michael was drowning in his father's shadow, terrified that Bill would realize he'd made a mistake. The kid was firing anyone over 45, not because it made business sense, but because he needed to show Daddy he could make tough decisions. I looked at the team photo on my desk. Half those engineers I'd hired and trained myself. I remembered staying up all night with them during system failures, running on coffee and determination. Now Michael was replacing veterans with recent graduates who worked for half the salary. "If you're not comfortable with our new direction," Michael said with that shark smile, "the transition package is quite generous." Transition package. Corporate speak for "here's some money, now disappear quietly." I felt that familiar calm settle over me. The same feeling I'd had in the Navy when clear thinking became the difference between mission success and failure. I closed my laptop without a word, tucked the termination folder under my arm, and stood up. "Tom?" Michael's voice carried uncertainty. Maybe he expected me to beg, to grovel like Jerry Martinez had done last month before they escorted him out anyway. I didn't say anything. Just walked out past my team, past the glass-walled offices full of people pretending not to notice. Nobody said a word. That kind of silence has weight. But here's what people like Michael don't understand. Sometimes silence is strategy. I didn't go straight home. Instead, I drove to Murphy's Diner, where I'd been eating lunch for 20 years. Carol poured coffee without being asked. She'd served me through promotions, through my divorce, through Sarah's medical school acceptance. She knew something was wrong. I sat there nursing black coffee, not angry, not panicked, just thinking. My lower back was starting to seize up from stress. 32 years of hunching over keyboards had left me with chronic pain. Cybercore had been my whole adult life. I'd joined when we were a scrappy 30-person operation in Virginia, back when defense contractors were run by ex-military guys who understood the mission. Bill Garrison had been different then, focused, principled. I'd watched us grow into a 2,000-employee operation with a $180 million Pentagon contract. All of it, the core infrastructure, the encryption protocols, the security architecture, had my fingerprints embedded in the foundation. I lived that code. It was in my head, built through years of impossible deadlines. The financial reality hit me. The divorce settlement 3 years ago left me with the house but also the mortgage. 8 more years at $3,200 per month. Sarah's medical school tuition ran $80,000 a year, 3 years left. My 401k was tied up in CyberCore stock, down 60% since Michael's optimization. At 57, finding another job in tech wasn't going to be easy. Every interview would end the same way. You're qualified, Tom, but we're looking for someone more flexible. Corporate speak for you're too old. I paid Carol and walked to my car. Time to go home safely and figure out my next move. Rex, my chocolate lab, would be waiting. The drive home gave me time to think clearly. Michael assumed I'd just fade away quietly, become another casualty of corporate restructuring. He figured I'd go gentle into that good night. He figured completely wrong. Home smelled like dog food and old leather. Rex looked up from his bed, tail wagging but cautious. Dogs know when something fundamental has shifted. I set the termination papers on my kitchen table, poured 3 fingers of bourbon, and opened a drawer I hadn't touched in years. Buried beneath tax returns was a slim manila envelope. Inside was something I'd almost forgotten. The original provisional patent application, my name at the top, not CyberCore's. Mine. Filed in March 2008 during one of the company's chaotic reorganizations when legal was focused on staying solvent. My old Navy buddy Tony Walsh had pulled me aside at a bar that spring. Tom, he'd said, file it under your name first. You can always assign it later when things stabilize. They never stabilized. They just got greedy. CyberCore had been licensing my core encryption framework for 16 years. Temporary licensing agreements with one specific clause buried in the legal text. In the event of involuntary termination without cause, reversion of rights shall trigger automatically within 14 days of formal notice. 14 days, 2 weeks to get my ducks in a row. Signed, stamped, filed with the USPTO in 2008. Nobody at CyberCore ever followed up because nobody thought I'd ever leave. I was the foundation guy, the reliable workhorse. Bill Garrison had trusted me implicitly. His son Michael saw me as dead weight. Guess what, kid? You just activated something you don't understand. My phone had been buzzing all evening. Text messages from coworkers. Sorry to hear, Tom. Keep in touch. Can't believe they let you go. The kind of messages people send when they're scared they might be next. I didn't answer any of them. They'd all stood there and watched it happen like spectators at a car accident. Not one person had spoken up when Michael handed me that folder. The stress was getting to me physically. My lower back had locked up completely during the drive home. I'd popped 800 milliliters of ibuprofen just to walk from garage to kitchen. 32 years of computer work takes a toll. Around 11 p.m., my phone rang. Sarah. My daughter always had uncanny timing. Dad, I saw something on your LinkedIn. It says you're no longer with CyberCore? I explained it simply. Her response was exactly what I expected from a practical 25-year-old medical student. Dad, forget them. You've got enough saved up, right? And I can take a gap year, maybe defer medical school. The debt load is getting insane anyway. Absolutely not. The words came out harder than I intended. You're not putting your life on hold because some corporate brat doesn't understand what he's dealing with. But the tuition costs, Dad, $80,000 a year. I know the divorce settlement wasn't easy financially. Don't worry about the tuition, sweetheart. Trust me on this one. I've got a plan. You always say that. But seriously, I could get loans. Sarah. I kept my voice calm but firm. You're finishing medical school on schedule. The money will be there. I promise. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time. The bourbon helped with back pain and helped clarify what needed to happen. Michael had made this personal when he threatened my ability to support Sarah's future. I opened my laptop and started typing. Not an angry email, not a legal threat, just a simple message to CyberCore's legal department with copies to Bill Garrison and the board. Subject line, patent reversion notice. 14. Day timeline. Please be advised that pursuant to patent number 99,847-321 filed March 15, 2008, the automatic reversion clause has been triggered due to involuntary termination without cause. Effective March 28, 2024, all rights to the core encryption protocols will revert to the original patent holder. CyberCore has 14 days to respond with licensing terms. Failure to respond will result in immediate cessation of usage rights. This is formal legal notice as required by the original agreement. I signed it simply. Thomas J. Caldwell, patent holder. Send. No turning back now. In 2 weeks, Cybercore would either negotiate with me as an equal or explain to Pentagon clients why their flagship security system had disappeared overnight. The response came at 6:43 a.m. the next morning. Bill Garrison himself. Tom, we need to talk. This can't be right. Call me immediately. Bill. I didn't call him immediately. I let him sweat while I took Rex for a walk, made breakfast, and considered my position. Around 10 a.m. I called back. Bill, Tom, what the hell is going on? Legal is telling me we never formalized the IP transfer for your encryption core. That can't be right. It's right, Bill. We talked about it in 2008. You said it would get sorted out once the Series C funding came through. Then the merger talks started, priorities shifted, and it never happened. I could hear him breathing slower now, processing the implications. Tom, that encryption system is the backbone of everything we do. The Pentagon contract, the Navy communications upgrade, everything runs on your protocols. I know, you can't just pull the rug out from under us. I'm not pulling anything, Bill. I'm offering to license it properly. For the first time in 16 years. A long pause. What do you want? That was the question I'd been waiting for. What do I want? I repeated Bill's question, letting it hang in the air. I want what should have happened 16 years ago. Fair compensation for my intellectual property. Tom, be reasonable here. We can work something out. What are we talking about? A consulting contract? We're talking about a licensing agreement, Bill. A real one this time. I could hear him shifting, probably looking out his corner office window, trying to figure out how much this would cost. Okay, what kind of numbers? I'd spent the morning doing research. Patent licensing and defense typically ran 3-8% of revenue for core technologies. Cybercore's encryption systems generated about $120 million annually, $25 million upfront payment to cover 16 years of unlicensed use, then 15% ongoing royalties on revenue generated by systems using my protocols. Silence. Long silence. Tom, that's a significant sum. It's fair market value, Bill, less than what you'd pay for equivalent technology acquisition. And there's one more thing. What's that? Michael's immediate resignation from any technical role. He can stay in some ceremonial capacity if Daddy needs to save face, but he doesn't touch anything that matters. Now you're talking about my son. I'm talking about the incompetent MBA who fired the architect of your core technology without understanding what he was destroying. Your son, Bill, is a liability. Another long pause. Bill was old-school military. He understood mission came first, even before family. But he was also a father. I need time to discuss this with the board. You have 12 days left. After that, the licensing offer expires, and you negotiate with my attorney. Who's your attorney? Tony Walsh. You remember Tony. Bill definitely remembered Tony. Tony Walsh had a reputation in D.C. for being the kind of IP attorney who could tie up core technology in federal court for years. Tony specialized in defense contractors. Tom, this seems excessive. We've worked together for 3 decades. And in 3 decades, Bill, your company never offered me proper compensation for building the foundation of your business model. I was loyal to you. Yesterday, your son treated me like office furniture. That hit home. I could hear it in his breathing. Give me 48 hours. I'll talk to the board. 48 hours, Bill. Then I want an answer. I hung up and immediately called Tony Walsh. We hadn't spoken in 2 years, but IP attorneys never forget a good patent case. Tom Caldwell. I was wondering when you'd call. You heard about Cybercore? Word travels fast, especially when it involves a $180 million Pentagon contractor realizing they don't own their core technology. How can I help? I explained the situation. Tony listened without interrupting, occasionally making lawyer noises that meant he was calculating settlement figures. This is beautiful, Tom. A textbook case of corporate negligence. They've been using your IP for 16 years without proper licensing. We're talking damages in tens of millions, plus ongoing royalties. I don't want to destroy them, Tony. I want fair compensation. You'll get fair compensation, plus interest. But first, let's talk about your leverage. Tony explained that Cybercore was in an impossible position. They had a major demo with Pentagon officials in 10 days. a presentation that would determine renewal of their primary defense contract. They can't afford to call your bluff, Tom. They'll pay whatever you ask rather than risk losing that Pentagon contract. What about the technical side? Can they reverse engineer my protocols? In 10 days, not a chance. Your encryption framework is 16 years of work. Even if they had source code, it would take months to rebuild. They can't. I trained most of their senior engineers, and Michael fired half of them. Perfect. So they're dependent on you, they have a hard deadline, and their backs are against the wall. The next morning, I woke up to 47 missed calls. Word had gotten out. Someone at Cybercore had leaked the patent situation to the defense contractor community. My phone was ringing before I'd finished coffee. Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman. Every major defense contractor wanted to know if I was available for consulting work. The irony wasn't lost on me. After 32 years of being treated like a replaceable cog, I was suddenly the most sought-after cybersecurity architect in the defense industry. But the call that mattered came at 2:30 p.m. Bill Garrison. Tom, we need to meet. What's the board's decision? The board is concerned. Michael presented his side yesterday, claims you're trying to extort the company, that your departure was performance-related. I felt my jaw tighten. And what do you think? I think my son is in over his head, and you're the only person who can save this company. Can you come tomorrow morning? 9 a.m.? I'll be there. But Tony comes with me. Fair enough. Tom? Yeah? I'm sorry about Michael, about how this went down. You deserved much better treatment. It was the first apology from anyone at Cybercore. It didn't change the numbers, but it meant something. The meeting was scheduled for tomorrow. In 18 hours, I'd be sitting across from the Cybercore board, not as Tom from engineering, but as the patent holder controlling their future. Michael had wanted to optimize me out of existence. Instead, he'd made me the most important person in the room. Sometimes the system works right. The Cybercore boardroom had changed since I'd last been inside. Gone were the military photos and Pentagon awards. In their place hung corporate art and motivational posters about synergy. Michael's influence was everywhere. I walked in at 9 a.m. with Tony Walsh. The board was seated, 5 men and 2 women I recognized from company events. Bill Garrison sat at the head, looking older than I remembered. Michael sat to his right in an expensive navy suit. Tom, Bill stood up, extending his hand. Thank you for coming. I shook his hand, then took the seat Tony indicated, directly across from Michael. Tony sat beside me and opened his briefcase. Before we begin, Tony said, pulling out a folder, I want to establish the facts. Mr. Caldwell owns patent number 9,947,321, filed March 15, 2008, covering the core encryption protocols that form Cybercore's technology foundation. This patent has never been transferred to Cybercore. For 16 years, this company has been using Mr. Caldwell's intellectual property without proper licensing. Patricia Wells, a board member, raised her hand. Surely this is a clerical error. Your legal department, Tony interrupted, was too busy with funding rounds to properly document IP transfers. Cybercore has been operating on borrowed technology. Michael shifted in his chair. This is legacy thinking that's holding us back. We can rebuild these systems. In how much time? Tony asked. 6 months, maybe less. You have 8 days until your Pentagon demonstration that determines whether you keep your $180 million contract. The silence was deafening. Without the demo, Cybercore would lose its primary revenue. Without my encryption protocols, there could be no demo. Bill cleared his throat. Tom, what exactly are you proposing? What I should have gotten 16 years ago. Fair compensation for building the technology that made this company successful. And what does that look like? $25 million upfront payment for 16 years of unlicensed use. 15% ongoing royalties on revenue generated by my protocols, a seat on the board with voting privileges, and Michael's immediate removal from any technical decision-making role. Michael shot to his feet. This is extortion. Dad, you can't seriously be considering... Sit down, Michael. Bill's voice carried command authority. Mr. Walsh, what happens if we refuse these terms? Tony smiled coldly. Mr. Caldwell's patent rights revert in 6 days. Any continued use becomes willful patent infringement. We file an emergency injunction in federal court. Your Pentagon demo gets canceled. Your primary contract gets terminated, and we sue for damages that could reach $200 million. You'd destroy the company, Patricia Wells said. No, I replied calmly. Michael destroyed the company when he fired the architect of its core technology without understanding what he was losing. I'm offering to save it. The board spent the next hour trying to negotiate. They offered consulting contracts, equity positions, reduced royalties. Tony shot down each proposal. Finally, Bill called for a recess. The board filed out, leaving just him, Michael, Tony, and me. Dad, Michael pleaded, we can't let legacy employees hold the company hostage. Michael. Bill's voice was quiet but sharp. Do you understand what you've done? I optimized our workforce. You fired the one person who could destroy this company. Bill turned to me. Tom, is there any way we can work this out without Michael's resignation? I looked at Michael, still radiating arrogant confidence. Bill, your son called my life's work legacy spaghetti code. He told the Pentagon my encryption protocols needed replacing. He fired half my engineering team and tried to replace them with recent graduates. Those were sound business decisions. Shut up, Michael. The words came out hard. You want to know what sound business looks like? It looks like keeping the guy who built your core technology happy. Bill was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice sounded tired. If I agree to your terms, can we move forward? The team I'd want to work with, yes. The trust Michael destroyed will take time. But the technology, contracts, Pentagon relationship, all can be salvaged. Another pause. Michael, I'm sorry, but it's time for you to explore other opportunities. Dad, you can't be serious. What you've done, Bill said quietly, is nearly destroy it. 3 hours later, I walked out with a signed agreement. $25 million up front, 15% ongoing royalties, and a board seat. Michael's resignation was effective immediately. I was being rehired as CTO with full authority and an equity package securing retirement. The first call I made was to Sarah. Medical school is paid for, sweetheart, all of it. Really? Oh my God, Dad, that's amazing. Your old man still has a few cards left to play. That evening, I sat on my back deck with Rex and good bourbon. My phone had been ringing all day. Former colleagues, defense contractors, reporters asking about the patent dispute that rocked the defense industry. Tomorrow I'd go back to Cybercore, not as Tom from engineering, but as Thomas J. Caldwell, CTO and board member. I'd start rebuilding the team Michael destroyed and ensuring the company my life's work built would survive. Some people called it revenge. I called it justice. Because when you spend 32 years building something, you don't let some kid with an MBA tear it down to prove a point. Sometimes the old guys really know what they're doing.